Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. I'm so excited to present to you Lucy Nathanson. Lucy is a child therapist specializing in an anxiety disorder called selective mutism. And Lucy's passion for helping children with selective mutism was sparked almost a decade ago when she came across a child who had not spoken at school for the 2 years he was there. Since then, she's published 3 books as well as 2 online courses and has a YouTube channel with well over 100,000 views. She works with parents and children internationally, and her mission is to help children worldwide to overcome selective mutism, free themselves of anxiety, find their voice, and shine. Her story is a shining example of what living intuitively is like, and I think her story will leave you inspired to listen closer to your own intuition. So here she is. Lucy, I am so thrilled that you're here with us. I'm so excited for this episode because I really think you're going to shed so much light on what it's like when we follow our intuition and we just really accept the gifts that we are given and we take this path. And you know what, sometimes even if it's uncertain, we make it into what you've made it for you as well. So thank you so much for being here. This is a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that you have invited me on your channel. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to delve deeper. So let's kick things off on the lighter side. So why don't we understand, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
Nothing too exciting. Some toast with some peanut butter. So nothing too elaborate, I'm afraid. It's pretty standard.
I love peanut butter. Oh, it's the best. Amazing.
Yeah, delicious, easy as well. Sometimes I do have, a smoothie and try to go a bit more out, but yeah, today just standard.
No, and you know what? Sometimes it's what you need to start the morning off is just some feel-good food. So I love peanut butter. I'm with you. So why don't we dive right into giving everybody a little bit of your background story? And so as vulnerably as you feel comfortable, can you share a little bit about how this journey unfolded for you?
Sure. Do you want me? How far back do you want me to go?
You know what? It's up to you because I'm not sure what spots might have played a big role when you were young. So if they did, I'd love to hear about them and how kind of that placed traces along your journey.
Sure. So when I was 7, I would say first of all that my life my childhood wasn't the kind of stereotypical traditional happy childhood that you would imagine, although I wouldn't say it as that, but perhaps not the normal stable childhood that we would imagine. So for example, my dad died when I was 7 years old, and that had a big impact on me, of course. And my mum then went through lots of challenges during that time, understandably, and then I lived with my nan for pretty much the rest of my childhood. And so it was quite unstable in many ways, and I think that really did affect who I am today in a positive way. So one really positive point is that I got different influences on me. So most people are just influenced by one person or 2 people, whereas I had these 2 key figures in my life, my mum as well as my nan, who also brought me up, and both of them were very, very different. So my mum is very much a, how can I put it, like a very eccentric character, very authentic, very much her true self, doesn't really follow social norms, very kind of just says what's on her mind, but in a very innocent kind of way.
Yeah.
So, and she always taught me just to be my true self, just to be me and not to worry about what other people think. Whereas my nan, on the other hand, is very grounded, very structured, always early, always taught me to have a very, to follow, to make a plan. And my mum, on the other hand, is always late. So I had these 2 big influences in my life. On the one hand, my mum, who is very unstructured and very just be your true self, shine, just, and on the other hand, my nan, who's very grounded and is very structured. So these 2 big influences on my life, I feel manifested in a really positive way within me, because there's one side that is very much I'm just my true self, and I just try to, within my work, I just try to be me and not follow conventions. For example, I don't know if you saw on my Facebook page the other day, I did a book reading to a group of children with selective mutism, and I just wore a unicorn onesie for that event. I literally just
I did not see that.
I don't know if you saw that.
No, but I'm going to go check it out. That's amazing.
So I wore my unicorn onesie, and I think that is literally like my mum's influence, because she would say, just do what, just be you. Whereas, so I've very much got that within me, but I've also got this really kind of structured work ethic within me, because my nan always taught me to, when you get your homework from school, you need to do your work. Before you can go out, you need to finish your homework. And so there were these two very opposite people who very much influenced me. So I would say that has really impacted me. And interestingly, in terms of selective mutism, it's so interesting that there are these key points in my life where I feel as though this is really what I'm here to do. Ooh. So just to give you an example, my mum is Polish, and as a child, she spoke to me in Polish, but I always responded to her in English. So I was very much, I could understand Polish, but I answered her in Polish sometimes, but mostly in English. And I really developed this anxiety around speaking in Polish to Polish speakers. Mm-hmm. So as a child, we'd go to visit Poland, and we'd visit my extended family, and my cousins, aunties, uncles never heard my voice, or they didn't hear me speak in Polish, because I had this big fear around speaking in Polish. And at the time it was horrible, but it really helps me now empathise with the children that I work with, because I can really understand how they felt. So that experience, I feel, was really putting me on the path to the work that I do today as well. So all these little, and there's more, I'm sure they'll come up through this interview, lots of different parts of my life that just put me on this path. So that's just an overview of kind of my childhood in a way. And then I went on to study applied psychology and sociology at university, which was an incredible time of my life. Loved studying psychology, and I did an extra year where I did a placement year. So I went to 8 different schools in my local borough for 3 weeks per school, and worked with children with a range of needs, like, for example, a school for children with autism, a school for children with physical disabilities, a school for children with speech and language difficulties. And during that year, I came across that first little boy with selective mutism. And that was the start of Confident Children, really. So that was when I first came across a child with selective mutism, and it just opened up this whole new passion for me. But I didn't start Confident Children straight away. I began working towards it, but it wasn't a full-time job for a long time. I became a psychology teacher after graduating, so I was teaching psychology for 3 years, which I loved. But alongside teaching, I was developing Confident Children. I was starting to make YouTube videos. I was starting to work with children. So I was teaching 3 days a week, Monday to Wednesday, and then on Thursday to Sunday, I was working on Confident Children. And just built and built until eventually I left my teaching job to focus on Confident Children full time.
Oh my gosh, you're right. What a story, how that unfolded for you. It's beautiful that you had the two influences, and then fortunately, and then you've turned that into kind of a beautiful part of your story, is that the passing away of your father as well. And wow. So actually, before we even go further into understanding how that all involved in more detail, I always like to refer to the little girl in us. Is there something that you dreamed or aspired to becoming when you were little?
I don't think there was anything specific that I wanted to be, but I knew that I wanted to work with children. And I have I'm a very animated, energetic person. So I would say I wanted to be maybe a child's entertainer, or maybe Oh, a big one, actually. I wanted to be at one point a TV presenter, maybe in Blue Peter, working on like a children's TV show as a TV presenter. So I suppose actually it's quite funny because my job now is almost like a mix of all of that. Because I work with children, but it's very much play based.
Yeah.
Interacting with them in a playful way.
Yeah.
But there's also the kind of the YouTube videos, the Facebook Live, so there's that side of it as well. So yeah, it's really interesting. And actually, sorry to sidetrack,
no, great.
I was watching a video that my dad took when I was about 5 years old, and he was interviewing me, and in the video he's saying, Lucy, when you're a grown up, what do you want to be? And I look at the camera and I say, when I'm big, I want to be a child again. And when I saw that video, I literally was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm not sure if it's just a coincidence, but it felt quite profound to
I honestly, I'm like, oh my God, this is, but that's funny that as a child, you were like, I want to be a child. I wanted to continue this way.
It's so weird. Yeah. It's so,
beautiful.
I'm not sure whether, I wanted to keep that like playful side, which I very much still have. And I, tap into that all the time in my work. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And so when you went into university, how come you picked sociology and psychology?
Oh, wow. It was always a no-brainer really for me, especially psychology. I loved psychology I always had an interest in child psychology. My mum actually studied psychology when I was a child. She was studying at university when I was a child. And I remember her it's strange, I don't know how I have a memory of this, but I really remember her writing psychology assignments and talking about different experiments and child development. So somehow I think the seeds might already have been planted. Yeah. And then as I was growing up, it was just so interesting for me. And I studied, of course, for A-level at college, studied psychology, which again was just amazing. And I think for the first time I found my subject.
Yeah.
At school I wasn't really I was a hard worker. I studied a lot and worked hard, but there were no subjects that I really loved. I just kind of did everything, got on with everything. But when I first started to study psychology, it just blew my mind. And I just got so interested. And actually there was a program called Child of Our Time that was on TV. And I was watching that maybe when I was about 11 years old or something like that. And they were following a group of children who were all born in the year 2000. And they were monitoring the children's development. So how that, the way they were developing when they're 1 year old, and how their attachment to their mum and their dad, and how their personalities were developing. And I would just remember watching this show and just being like, this is just the most exciting. For me, it was just so fun to watch and to be pulled into this world of human behavior and how we develop as people and our personalities. Especially child psychology was always an interest for me. And and one more thing, actually, this is quite crazy actually. When I was about 11 years old or 12, I can't remember, early adolescence, I used to be obsessed with these books by an author called Tori Hayden. And all the books, there was a whole series, and they were all called things like The Child Who Wouldn't Talk and The Teacher Who Saved Her. And I remember reading these books and just loving them and just getting so lost in the world and just imagining that I was that teacher saving this child. And it was only until a few years ago, Yvonne, it was only until a few years ago that I researched the name, because I still remember these books and how they I was so involved and loved them, and I just googled the name of the author, and it turns out that the author is a specialist in selective mutism, and I can't remember her ever using that phrase in the book. So it's just crazy how, you know, everything seems, all these little coincidences that were just putting me on that path.
Wow, I'm honestly, and oh my God, like, sorry, I need a minute. Like, this is, wow, this is such an evolution. Like, it was just like, you were so guided to this almost. It was almost like it was like trailed for you. So when you were watching this show with the development of these children, how old were you at the time, did you say?
I would say early teen, maybe 12, 13, something like that.
Wow.
And about the same time, I was really interested in these books. And then I'd also gone through the phase, or still going through, the inability to talk in Polish to certain people, in Polish.
Wow. Okay, so you know what, before we go further, I want to actually just put a little caveat here, and why don't we describe a little bit what selective mutism is, so people can follow along as we go, because that way they have a better understanding before we jump to the next question. So what would you say it is? What would you describe it as?
Yeah, of course. So selective mutism is an anxiety disorder, and people who have selective mutism can talk, and talk comfortably in situations where they're at ease. So, for example, the children I work with can talk freely at home with parents and siblings, but they're unable to talk in other situations, such as at school. So children may be completely mute at school, or they may only talk to a couple of friends in private. They might be unable to talk to certain extended family, and the majority of children are unable to answer strangers. If somebody in the supermarket says, "What's your name?" or "How old are you?" they freeze and they're unable to answer.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, because I want everybody to make sure they follow along. So what I find really interesting about this process that you described, and I did not know that it went that deep actually and that far back, which is actually so fast. I'm just blown away. And I'm curious, because a lot of us can really brush this intuitive knowing, or this intuitive process that you went through, can brush it off and be like, oh, I got lucky. And for instance, when one of the situations that you described to me was that when you were doing a placement, you were able to help this particular child who had been mute throughout his duration at this school, and then within 3 weeks of working with you, you kind of made up this intuitive process to help him out of that situation. So when you realize, you're like, wow, I kind of just made that up, and I somehow knew what I was doing, and kind of like one breadcrumb led to the other. How did you, what evolved after that? Like, what was that process like for you? But I'm also wondering if there was a defining moment when you were like, this is for me. Like, you were like, I know this is for me now.
Yeah. So over that placement year, I went to 8 different schools, and they were all super interesting. I loved each and every experience I had working with children with lots of different needs and learning. I learned so many skills. But working with that little boy with selective mutism, it was almost as though, how do I even describe it? Okay, so when I walked on the first day at that school, the head teacher was showing me around, and I walked into this classroom, and he said, this is a reception classroom. And as soon as I walked in, I noticed this child who wasn't talking to anybody. And I commented on it immediately, and I said, why isn't he talking? And he said, he has selective mutism. And I just had this pull to help this child. And I said to the head teacher, I asked him whether I could work with this child while I was on my placement at that school, and he agreed. And the whole experience was so powerful for me that there was this intuitive knowing of how to help this boy, but there was also the excitement and the interest of learning more. So I'd come home and be researching strategies, techniques, but I'd also be in the moment just trying things, and they were working. And so this child who had not spoken for 2 years began talking to me for the first time. And I just remember sitting in the book corner with him in his classroom, and the first word he said to me was bear, because I was reading an animal book to him, and he said the word bear. And I just remember this rush of, oh my gosh, he's done it. And I'm just getting goosebumps, like just telling you now. And it was just this overwhelming, okay, Lucy, stay calm, just don't show any reaction, just you know, I inside myself, I wanted to, you know, just, it was
like lift this kid up and be like, you did it. Yeah.
It was just the most amazing experience. And then to just see how that evolved once he'd broken down that first barrier. And then I helped him speak to other children in his class, and then his teacher. And by the end of that placement, he was putting his hand up and answering questions in class. And I just remember the whole thing was just magic happening before my eyes. The most incredible experience I'd ever had. And I realized that this boy's life is now changed. His whole, you know, the trajectory of his future is now different. And I remember on the last day at that school, I felt, oh my gosh, I'm leaving. I'm leaving. How's it going to be? But I could see that he was almost elated. He was so happy that he now could talk. And it was almost as though I felt that, you know, he'll be okay now. He was now able to talk. He was now able to be him. And yeah, it was just the most incredible experience, the most magical experience. And I just knew that this is what I'm here to do. I need to help more children who are currently unable to talk at school. And the shocking thing for me at that time was that there was nobody really specializing in this that I could find. So in that school, that child, you know, he'd been there for 2 years, and the head teacher just said to me in a very casual way that, you know, that psychologists have been in to assess him, speech and language therapists have been in to assess him, but nothing has worked. And at that time, I wanted to be an educational psychologist. That's why I was on placement, learning about these different conditions. But then I realized that, you know, I haven't really seen an educational psychologist in the schools that I've been in. What I really want to do is be working with children in the classroom, just as I did with this little boy. I want to be hands-on, playing with them and helping them in real time. And that job doesn't exist. And I had this realization that if the job doesn't exist, then I need to create it.
Oh, amazing.
So yeah, and I just realized that, you know, I don't want to work in an office writing reports. I don't want to be working for someone else. I want to do what I've just done, this magic that just happened before my eyes. I need to do it again. So then I just started to, families just started to gravitate towards me. And soon people were wanting me to work with their child, and it just grew from there. And of course, I've then did, you know, further training on selective mutism, and I traveled the world. I went to New York to learn some strategies from there, and started to make the YouTube videos. And it just kind of, and what I truly believe is that we're all here to share our unique talent with the world. I believe that we all have something within us, and when we find that thing, everything will fall into place, and there'll be synchronicities, and the universe will support us on that path, because that's what we're here to do, especially if it's serving the world. And I really found that it's just effortless, that, you know, people were coming and situations were happening, and yeah, and it was just I just knew that this is what I need to do. As soon as I finished with that boy, I knew that I need to now work with another child with this condition.
Oh my God, it just gives me, so then it gives me goosebumps just to hear you say that, because I find it so beautiful. So from that moment that you had worked with him, you said that's really where Confident Children started. But then you said you also worked as a teacher for a little bit, teaching psychology. So was the teaching just a job in the interim as you set yourself up to continue this work, or was it kind of like what role did that serve for you before you actually were like 100% confident children, like I don't want to hear anything else kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. I feel as though we shouldn't resist things that come into our path. We should ride the wave. And, teaching was something that I almost fell into, and I loved it. I really loved teaching psychology. It was so much fun. I loved the rapport I had with my students, and it was just an amazing experience. And it also gave me that space to have a stable job for 3 days per week, so that I had the rest of the week to build confident children. And I think that it's quite difficult for people to start a business or, begin a venture from zero without having any. So teaching really gave me that space to have, some stability while I was building confident children. And of course, it taught me so much. Yeah. Teaching taught me so much and gave me a lot of confidence to be able to talk in conferences and do YouTube videos and be in front of an audience, because that's essentially what I was doing when I was teaching. So I developed that side of me as well. And there was that tipping point when I had to decide whether to leave teaching or not. And it was a really hard decision. It wasn't easy because I really loved it. But I knew that if I really want to make my mark and do what I'm here to do, I need to devote fully to it.
Wow. Oh, I can imagine that moment. You're just kind of sitting there and you're like, what do I do? But for you, I guess, was it clear? It was just, or did it take a couple of days? Like, was it a process, or was it like?
No, it was about 6 months. Okay. I was reading the book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
Oh, wow.
And it took about 6 months to make that decision to leave teaching and focus fully on confident children, because it's scary when you have a stable job to take the leap and fully work on your own venture. It's a risk. You don't know if it's going to be successful or not. You don't know whether you'll have enough work. You don't, it's a real unknown. So, and also coupled with the fact that I really enjoyed teaching, I loved it. So it was hard to make that decision. But again, I kept telling myself that this is what I'm here to do. And if I don't take the leap, then there'll always be a ceiling to what I can achieve. There'll always be, parents who want me to work with their child, but I can't because I'm working Monday to Wednesday teaching. So there'll always be that barrier. So I need to take that leap. And again, I trust that everything will work out as it should. And even if, I remember in Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, one of the key messages is that when we have to make a big decision, we seem to think there's one right decision and one wrong decision. And it's so hard to make decisions because we don't know whether I'm making the right decision or not.
So true.
But really, if we think about it, they're both right decisions, because whatever decision you make, you will grow from it. You'll have learning, you'll have experiences, and that whatever it is, there'll be growth. So in my mind, I was thinking, even if I leave my job and I start my business and it doesn't work out, I'll learn how to cope with that situation. I'll have that growth. So it will be okay. Everything is figure outable. Everything will be fine. It was a long process, but it definitely wasn't an instant decision, no.
But hey, what a powerful way to believe and to continue to encourage yourself to think it's true that if I don't take this leap, I'll reach a ceiling and I won't necessarily feel like I'm creating as much impact as I could. So that's actually really powerful, because when you started Confident Children, you mentioned, what was the first thing you did to start the business? Like, what's the first thing that generated the clients? or not client, but like the first case, to call it like that, or first parent.
Okay, this is another great. So the first paying parent. So obviously when I was working in my placement, that was, a placement. So I was just in the school and I started to work with the child. But again, it's just crazy how things fall into place, and I really believe this, that, as I've said already, that when we're on path, when we're doing good in the world, when we have pure intentions and we want to make a difference, the universe supports us. Everything works out, the puzzle pieces form. So the first paying parent was, this is so basically, my boyfriend at the time wanted to go to this event with a speaker from the USA. So he was following this speaker, and he wanted to go to an event because this lady was coming to England. So I was going to join him to go to this event, and we saw that you could have a store there to advertise your services, to give out leaflets and so on. So I emailed them and said, I've just started this business called Confident Children. I've got some leaflets. Is it okay if I have a stall at the event and I hand out leaflets? And this lady is like a kind of like a life coach style person. So they replied saying, yes, of course you can have a stall. So that was that. The next day, I received an email from the organisers and saying that another attendee who wants to attend our event has just got in touch. They live in London as well, just like you, and they've contacted us saying that they're attending the event and they really want help because their child has got selective mutism and she doesn't talk at school. And we told that parent that someone has got a stall at our event who is helping children with exactly this condition. Would you like me to put you in touch with this family?
Are you serious?
Yeah, that was my first ever paying client.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So it's just crazy how
I wouldn't have been able to make it up if I could, because it just sounds so intricate, the pieces between like the organizers contacting, and that's
exactly. So I emailed them telling them what I do. The next day, a parent emailed them. We're all both emailing America simultaneously from London. And then that person in America put us in touch. And then, and that was the first little girl that I worked with. And and then it just kind of, and then, when you start to help and you start to get the results, just word of mouth started to spread, and I started the YouTube and so on, and it just grew from there. But
and were you ever nervous that you wouldn't be able to replicate the result after the first child?
Well, it's hard to think back so far. It's almost a decade ago now.
Oh my gosh.
I think I was so excited by the idea of helping this child, and with each child now, of course, I know exactly, it's so at that stage, of course, at the very beginning, I spent a lot of time preparing each session. It was my life, and I would spend way more time than you'd imagine. It was just almost an obsession. So I'd really want to help this little girl and really understand her and what her interests are, and create the session plans and so on. So it just became such a part of my mission that I started to see results, because normally these children don't have somebody who is able to give them that amount of energy, amount of focus. They get lost in the busyness of the classroom when there are 30 children who are all, making a lot of noise, and there's that one child who's not talking. It's hard for them. That it can sometimes go unnoticed. So, and absolutely no disrespect to teachers, because of course, how can they have that space and time to focus on that one child when they have 30 children to work with? So it's really difficult. So I suppose I was doing everything I could to help this child. The parents could see that I was so dedicated to helping their daughter. So it was a process, a journey. But yeah, I can't remember if I'm sure I did have doubts as I went. There's always ups and downs. But
yeah, and but it's like you had the faith. You knew that you'd figure it out. Which is
exactly.
So I actually want to dive into a little bit more of that personal, emotional journey, because like you said, it's up and down, and there are so many swings one way to the other, whether this decision or that decision's right. So it's really interesting to hear that you had the two influences of your first your mom and then your nan, which I assume is your grandma, right? That's what you guys say. Okay, amazing. So because you had two really strong female influences, and I'd like to ask this question because sometimes we gravitate to female stereotypes and we hang on to them as if they're a barrier. So I'm curious, but at some point on this journey, because now you're a leader in this space, so now people look to you to learn, have you had to break away from female stereotypes or ways that you've identified in order to grow?
It's an interesting one. I think that I'm quite lucky that I don't think I ever had the core belief that because I'm a female that I can't do something. So I don't think anything about being a female has held me back in my mind. What I think more so is just perhaps the societal idea of, as humans, of what we should be doing. We should have a normal job, a 9 to 5. We should stay to what is known. We should just follow the normal path. And I think that was more of a barrier, which I think would affect females and males, perhaps.
Yeah.
The idea that we to break away from the norm, the mold, and to do something different.
Yeah, always takes that level of courage. So what would you say then, 10 years ago when you started this, I think you mentioned it's been 10 years, when you started this to now, in terms of like what you've had to learn emotionally and and the doubts that you've had to overcome, what do you think has been a little bit of that evolution for you to make you feel so confident in what you're doing now?
Yeah. I would say I've had to learn to not put so much pressure on myself. I think in the early stages, I would really want to help a child and feel as though if we're not getting the leaps quick enough that I'd kind of put too much pressure on myself. And now, whenever I work for family, I tell them from the very beginning that we can't guarantee how your child will respond to the process. I'll do, of course, everything I can to help them, but we don't know the pace they'll respond. We'll have to move at their pace. We'll have to adapt as we go. So I think it's really important to be honest with parents in the beginning and to take away the pressure from all angles. Because ironically, if we are at ease, then that will help the child to be at ease. So I think I've had to learn that as well, to take away the pressure on myself, which as a result takes the pressure off the whole process. And I've also had to learn to not get affected by what other people think, or that fear of what people think, because again, breaking away from the mold of what is the norm, how things, even whenever you put anything out into the world. So I've been doing YouTube videos, I've written books and making courses and so on. It's quite in the reality of it is that it's quite exposing in a way. I remember when I first got my Eliza book in the post, it was about 2 years of work to get this book to put this book together. And I remember thinking that, oh my gosh, when I get the book, I'm going to be so excited. I'm going to be so like, yes, celebrate. I remember getting the book in the post, and my first feeling was, oh my gosh, now I need to put it out into the world. Now I need to put it on Amazon. What if people don't like it? What if this? What if that? And I just remember feeling fear. That was my initial thought, which is crazy to think that, you know, and that can be a real barrier. And I think it can stop a lot of people in just sharing their creativity with the world, that fear of what other people will think.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. And I really resonate with that. It's true. There's a certain build up towards that anticipation of what people will think, because it's really just an imagination as to what the reaction will be. So how did you manage that? What did you do? What did you change to be like, maybe it was a languaging thing? I don't know.
I would say it was, I remember with the Eliza example, I remember speaking to a friend of a friend who is a Buddhist, and I remember giving him that exact example and saying that, you know, I've just created this book, and I thought I'd be so excited to share it, but I feel scared. I'm worried about what people think. And he said to me, Lucy, your responsibility is to create and to share that with the world. It's none of your business what other people think about it. There can be one cake and one person can love it and say that this is the most delicious cake I've ever tried, and another person can taste it and say this is disgusting. So is the cake delicious or disgusting? It's neither. It's neutral. It's a creation, and there will be different perspectives, and that's okay. Other people's opinions have nothing to do with you. Your responsibility is to create and share, and that's it. That's the end of your role. So I think that helped me. And so now I do, you know, I try to have that mindset, and especially if you are, you know, doing YouTube videos and creating content, you're not going to please everybody. There will be people who click dislike on your videos, and that is so hard and painful when you've created something with heart and love, and you're proud of it, and you see that someone's disliked it. It can be really painful, but there's a point where you have to accept that that's a fact of life. Not everyone will like us, not everyone will like what we do, but you know, we just have to keep going and keep moving forward and doing the best that we can.
Oh my gosh, I don't know, that was, what a friend. What a guy. That's the most amazing advice. Wow, that's beautiful, because ever since then you've put a lot out into the world. I think you have several pieces now that you've written, and your YouTube channel is quite followed, obviously, because it's been a few years, but also testament to the impact you're creating. So actually, I'm curious, because we've talked a lot about letting go of these fears and doubts. What has been the most painful thing you've had to let go of on this journey? For instance, just to give you, was it a belief? Was it a person, a habit? The one that cost you, that you were like, you know what, I really had to let this die, or let this person go, or if there is anything, if not.
I would say it was that fear of what will people think. That fear of wanting, you know, because we want people to like what we do, and we want to be liked. It's a natural human instinct. So,
and when you're caught up in that pattern, because sometimes I know it comes up, even if you think you're you know, I don't care, what do you say to yourself? What's something practical that you could give us? What is it, something that you tell yourself maybe not to care, so you don't care so much?
I say nowadays, I say that this too shall pass. So even if, luckily, thank God, I haven't really had any negative, you know, response at all. But it was just when I was creating those books or those programs and stuff, and I was worried about, you know, in my own mind. But now I tell myself, whatever happens, that will pass. It will be okay. It will be history. It might feel scary in the moment, just like when I published my book. I was so scared in that moment, but now I don't feel scared.
Yeah.
It passes. And so everything is temporary and we can get through it.
Mm. And I'm assuming you also experience that with the child as well, in a consistent basis. When you work with them, you see this like, wow, it's kind of like, it gives you a little bit as well. Wow, that's amazing. So now I want to highlight something. We've highlighted the story of how it all started. So what would you say is your definition? So in this journey, like obviously you've experienced a lot of success, and I'm curious because success is such a term these days, you know, it's like so coined to certain things and certain people. Or so what is your definition of success, and how is it different now than when it was when you started university? And how has this definition, this evolution of the definition, really empowered you?
Oh, so I would say, first of all, at university, my definition of success was to get good grades, get a good degree, and get a good job. That was probably the goal, to get a good job, a stable job. That was my definition of success at the time. Whereas now, my definition of success is spending my days on my passion, doing what I want to do, and really feeling as though I'm making the difference that I know that I, as well as we all, are here to make. Know that I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to do, being on path. And that's completely different for everybody. For some people, being on path is having a 9-to-5 job. For some people, that is their highest excitement and their highest alignment. For other people, it's not having a job at all and being a parent and devoting themselves to their child. That's their path and their alignment. And that is success. So it's really a case-by-case situation, a definition of success. But I would say the ultimate answer is when we are living our highest excitement, when we wake up knowing that this is what I'm waking up to do, what I'm supposed to do today, whatever that may be.
Yeah. Wow, that's gives me shivers hearing that, because it's so true. It's beautiful. So what would be one piece of advice you'd give young females then? Would you say that would be it? Listen to that intuition and follow your highest, you called it excitement, which I really like, but it's more like follow that path.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say don't be afraid to go off the path, the usual path that society dictates to us. Follow your heart. I know it sounds cliche, but if something is pulling you, like when I first came across that little boy, that pull. If I didn't listen to that, the idea scares me. If I didn't listen to that, actually,
really,
like if I hadn't listened to that pull, how maybe I would have got a normal job in an office or whatever. I can't even comprehend. So,
that's amazing.
like, we need to listen to that. When I would say, going back a step, the advice I'd give to young women would be, number one, expose yourself to different experiences in order to find that thing that lights you up. So because I had the opportunity to go to 8 different schools and spend 3 weeks each at 8 different schools, I was exposed to all these different conditions and children and different disorders that I could, and like I said, I loved the whole year. It was incredible. But the experience of that child with selective mutism was different to the others. Exactly. So the advice would be to expose yourself to different experiences, and when that little fire, lights within, follow it.
Yeah.
Nurture it. Continue to explore that path a bit more and a bit more. And not everything will lead to a career or a big destination, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Carry on doing this, and then explore something else, and just keep on following that whatever it is that lights you up. Explore that, and trust in the idea that we are here to do amazing things. We don't have to follow the normal grain. If there's something that is a bit different, then, like I said, if the job that you want to do doesn't exist, then create it.
Yeah. Wow. That's wow. It's a bit of the internal leadership, knowing that and recognizing it and then acting on it. Wow. And so when we talk a little bit more about confident children, I want to can you tell us a little bit about more about the mission going forward? Is it something that you're looking to grow to be more than yourself, or is it something that is just so close that you prefer to keep it?
So in the past year and a half, I have grown confident children. So there's now 4 of us on this confident children team. So
Congrats!
And that was a big thank you. That was a big step for me to take, because confident children has been very much my baby, and I've really developed it, created it. So it was a big step for me to expand. So we now have a couple of confident children practitioners who work with children just like I do, and have a PA who helps with the admin and emails and so on. So I have been growing confident children, and that's been a real new direction in the last year or so. And in terms of moving forward, I would say that I'm really happy with where we're at in this moment, and I never want to do something just because I should, or that's what people say. So I go to business events where people talk about expanding your business and make franchises, do this, do that. And when I've been told this in the past years, it just didn't feel comfortable or in alignment within me. So people have been telling me for years, advertise positions, advertise and get people, and get 20 practitioners in the next 6 months, and and for me, I just felt that that's just forcing something that it just didn't feel right to me. So I knew that the right people or person will come along at the right time. I've always trusted that everything happens as it should. Things work out, and I don't have to force anything. I just have to be in alignment, on path, carry on acting on inspiration if I get an idea, doing it, and kind of being playful and continuing my mission, and the right person or people will come along. And that's exactly what happened. I've never advertised, apart from for the PA position. I did interview a few people for that, but for the people that work with children, I've never advertised. I've just known that the right person or people will come along, and they did. And when they reached out to me, I instantly knew that they're the right person.
Wow.
I just knew that they've got that magic ingredient that isn't in everyone. It's not, if I put an advert out there and said looking for a therapist to work with children, people might have the right qualifications or the right whatever, but I'm looking for a magic ingredient. and I knew that it will come to me. And when these two therapists reached out to me independently, and I had contact with them, I knew they were the right person. So yeah, so I'm now really comfortable with the team I have. I'm very happy with it, and I will let the universe decide if that grows in the next year or if it stays the same. I'm not going to push anything. I'll carry on doing what I'm doing and carry on having fun in the process and let things pan out.
Wow. You keep amazing me every time, just with this intuition, this like level of like just trust. It's friggin' amazing. It's just, you're right, like we don't need to be anywhere else. We shouldn't push ourselves to be anywhere other than where we are. And I'm curious though, but when you, let's say, get an idea, because a lot of us get ideas, right? Or a lot of us, for example, hiring your first team member, they came to you. Did you purposely put an ad out there and just not look for the person, and they was just like really out of the blue, they messaged you being like, do you happen to be hiring? And also, how did you know that it was the right time to hire? Like, was there a moment where you were like, oh, okay, it's time now?
I think it's important to stay open to opportunities. So I'm an open person. So if I receive an email from somebody who's inquiring, I will be open, but I also trust my gut and the feeling I have within. So I didn't put any advert out, and I always receive emails from people saying, can I do a placement with you, or can I work with you, or can we do, like, people reach out to me a lot, and I got the emails, and each time I just listen within. And up until this point, I didn't have that feeling that yes. So I replied to these people politely saying, thank you for your email, and at the moment I'm not looking to expand, or I have someone already, and that's fine. And I kind of just, if I don't have that inner knowing, then I don't act on it. Mm-hmm. So when I got these from these specific practitioners, when they emailed me, I just had this moment that I just, yes, they're the ones. And of course, I'm very sensible, and I protect confident children. So we had a process of, we'll just start with one child maybe, and we'll be monitoring how it goes, and I'll be giving you a lot of support, and etc., etc., etc. So I was very much guiding the person initially, but still I really did trust my intuition in the process.
Wow. I'm just like blown away. It gives me goosebumps. Even just the whole story of like how you it's so, your story's so beautiful, and it's just so inspiring. So actually, something that I want to touch base on, because you bring up, but in conversation, I refer to confident children as a business, and then you were like, Yvonne, one thing I want is that even though it's a registered business and it's how you make a living, let's say, you prefer not to call it that way. And I'm curious as to understand what that does for you and why that is.
Well, it's not that I don't like to call it a business. It's rather that when somebody is talking about a business, the instant idea that comes into mind is that this is a thing I do to make money. I'm making this product that's going to make me money. I'm going to, whereas with confident children, even though I'm so grateful that it's how I make my living, that's not the first reason why I do it. It's my passion and it's my life purpose. And even if I wasn't able to make money from it, I would still do it. It's my essence. It's what I'm here to do. So for that reason, it's not the same. I don't have the same feeling as I'm starting a business. And when I go to, for example, business events and to network with entrepreneurs and so on, because I feel that's important to do as well, to meet successful people and to network with them. Quite often people at these events talk about their sales strategy and how, you know, their marketing, their marketing and things like that. And for me, that's so alien, because I don't have a sales strategy. I don't do marketing. I share my knowledge, my passion, to make videos, wanting to share information that will help people. And then families reach out and want me to help their child.
Mm-hmm.
And I never try to sell to a family. I never try to use any tactics or whatever. Instead, I tell them what I can offer, and it's up to them if they want me to work with their child or not. There's no kind of, you know, strategies behind it. So it's rather a human to human connection, speaking to that parent and just understanding where their child is at, and if they want further support or not, it's up to them. So it's really just a passion and a life purpose, which I'm very fortunate is also the way that I have my living.
Yeah, it's so beautiful, and I wanted to bring that up because I think a lot of us can try and pigeonhole some passions or ideas or things that we want to do into these constructs. And I think the way that you've done it is so beautiful because you've allowed it to still function as that, but identified and recognized that that's not what. At the end of the day, there's something deeper about that. So I think it's beautiful. And I remember talking to you, and I just thought, you know, this could help so many people that are just trying to make this a business, which changes in many times the priority and the values. So that's really interesting. So actually, I before we start to close, I just wanted to ask you, if you were to distill to one thing, like, what's the biggest reason why you do what you do? Like, what is the bigger impact or the bigger picture you're looking to have? Like your deeper why?
Yeah. It's my first thought was it's to help as many children with selective mutism as possible. And that is the bigger reason. It's to help as many children to find their voice, to overcome their anxiety, to be their true self, to shine, to help as many children as possible. But at the same time, it's those individual children that I work with, and having those moments with each child, it's just magic. Working with just one on that one-to-one level, and to see their whole, to see them come alive, to see them be able to finally put their hand up in class and answer a question, to see that the whole new world has opened up to them, is just the most special experience I could imagine. I remember, just to give you an example, I was working with a boy a few months ago, and he's about 10, and he hadn't spoken to a teacher in his life or to any children at school. And I went to his house for a couple of home sessions, and he began talking to me. And he said, "But how are you going to help me at school? Like, I want to talk at school, but how can you help me?" And I explained to him the process, and then he was so ready for it. He was so ready for it. He just needed somebody to just implement and just do it and guide him, take his hand and just put all those pieces of the puzzle together. And in that week, it was just like, he just started talking to the teaching assistant and then the teacher, and then we brought in friends, and it was just like he was just ready. At each challenge I gave him, he grabbed with both hands. And by the end of the week, he was talking, to everyone in the class. And it was just like, oh, at the end of that week, I just have to take a moment to just be like, what just happened? What just happened? Like, it's just the most amazing experience that I am so grateful that I get to spend my days doing. I can't imagine doing anything else. So that's my why.
I just see it radiating out of you. It's beautiful. Oh my God. Oh my God. Wow. It's so nice. And I'm sure I could actually talk to you about this for hours because this is just beautiful. So just to actually close, I want to close on one last question. And I'm just wondering, how does you take care of so many children and you're really there for them? And in many ways, you're there for many families. And you really support them and, bring them together in many ways, open up some little boy or little girl's life. So I'm wondering, how do you take care of yourself? So how do you take care of yourself, and do you have any self-love rituals, or how do you stay sane in all this, in all your work?
That's a great question. And I'd say that's also something that, when you said, what have I learned over the years? That's also something that I have learned to develop within myself, separating or having that work-life balance, because confident children is so my essence. It can really take over. And even though I love it and I have so much fun, it's really important to also have times when I'm not focusing on confident children,
Yeah.
So in terms of self-love rituals, I love traveling, love to spend time with friends, of course. I love doing fun things, and I try to spend some time every day and I'm not perfect, definitely not, but doing some yoga, going for a walk to the park. I love walking in the park and listening to music and just clearing my head and just walking and just allowing myself to have a break, have some mental space and just be in nature. I love to do that. Reading.
Yeah. And do you read anything outside of like psychology?
Yeah.
Or self-development?
I really do like personal development books. I don't know if it's probably still psychology, but I really do. It's like loosely linked, but yeah, I do like to read books. For example, I was reading a book recently called Atomic Habits.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Oh, have you read it? Yeah, so that was great because again, it's teaching us to incorporate those habits into our life, that meditation or yoga or that walk or whatever that can easily be forgotten about, or we want to do it but we just never get around to it, or healthy eating or whatever. So so I love to read books that are about how we can develop ourselves further and be the best version of ourselves.
Oh my God, I guess you're always trying to grow. It's beautiful. So just to close, I'm wondering, is there any content that you recommend that really inspires you, or that you'd want to share, that you're like, you know what, you mentioned a really good book at the beginning, the one that pushed you kind of off the edge to start your business. So I think we'll put that in the notes. But is there any other content that you like to read or consume, I guess?
Yeah. So the first book was Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I read that book, which was a big change maker for me. Atomic Habits, a recent book. And there was another book which really impacted me called I Can See Clearly Now by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And Wayne Dyer was a spiritual teacher who is super inspiring. I love watching his videos. One of his quotes is, "Don't die with the music still in you." So that's a big part of my philosophy to life as well. And in his book, I Can See Clearly Now, he speaks about each part of his life. So all of his experiences. So there's a chapter on, when he was 5 years old and he had a certain experience when he was 10 years old. So he talks about all these experiences he's had. And after each experience, he then says, I can see clearly now. And he explains how that experience that he had was a positive for his life. So even if in that moment it was hard, it was a challenge, it was a really difficult experience, he's then reflecting on that and saying, I can see clearly now why that had to happen, why that has made me who I am. Wow. So that book, I Can See Clearly Now, is a book that I really liked. Well, actually, I should read it again because I haven't read it for a few years. But I remember reading that and just thinking, wow, that's an amazing way to look at life.
I actually haven't read it. I'm actually going to look it up because I always love to, I'm like you, I love consuming this kind of content and just seeing like how I can improve and just get those nuggets. So yeah, it's well, I love Wayne Dyer too. He's just so wise.
Exactly. Yeah. And his other quote, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Oh, yes. It's so funny, actually. I was remembering that quote the other day when I was walking. I was like, wow, this is just so much life. It's just, yeah, that is life. It's just how we see it. All right. So is there anything that you would like to share with us before we close that you think that we didn't touch on? One of the things that I really wanted to bring up was the process that you go through with the kids, and as well as like giving some tricks to parents. But I feel like I'm just going to refer everybody to some of the content you have on YouTube, because that will probably serve them a little bit better than if we try to, go through it too quickly here. So, but is there anything else that you feel like that you'd love to share with us before we close?
Oh, wow. I would say really echoing that message that we all have a unique talent to share with the world. We all deserve to shine and to share ourselves and our beauty with the world, whatever that is that we have within us. Just as Wayne Dyer says, don't die with your music within you. If you've got a pull to paint, to create music, to make food or whatever it may be, if you've got a pull, it's so often that we kind of ignore that because we focus on what's important, dealing with the day-to-day things that just bombard us, and we can get almost lost in that. But those things are just as important, if not more important, than the day-to-day things. So if you always love to paint, if you always love to write stories, carve out time to do that. Spend time on your passions, nurture that, and allow that to come out. And also, the second message would be authentically you. So allow yourself to be yourself. And that can be so hard because we're trained by society to be in a certain way. Probably people wouldn't advise someone to do a book reading in a unicorn onesie, but the children loved it. They loved it. The parents told me that their children woke up buzzing, and that's because I allowed myself to be me. And I'm so grateful that, like I said at the beginning of this, my mum has really given me that message. Because she doesn't follow social norms and she just is just herself and very eccentric, I've just learnt to do these things just to be me, and I'm so grateful for that message. I remember last summer I was with my mum in Poland by a lake, and we were listening to music, and my mum said to me, "Why don't you get up and dance right now?" And I said to her, like, "Mum, that's embarrassing. I can't do that. Like, people are around." And she was like, "Lucy, if you want to dance, you should dance." And I just thought, I'm so lucky that I have that message, because a lot of people don't have that message. So be you, shine your light, and that's the way forward, in my opinion.
I really would love to be your mom. She sounds like an incredible woman. Yeah, that's true. We all need to hear that. We all need to be reminded that we need to break away from that mold or box and just be ourselves. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm curious, how can people find you some people want to follow your journey and continue on what you're doing?
So my website is confidentchildren.co.uk, and my Facebook page is Confident Children Selective Mutism Therapy, and my YouTube channel is Confident Children. So you can find me on all those channels.
Pretty easy, and I'll leave it in the notes below so that way it's all there for everybody.
Great, thank you.
And just to close, what is the best way this community can serve you? You support us and you help, and you're doing incredible work. So is there any way that we can support you? Whether it's by following your work,
kind. Maybe liking my Facebook page, sharing my videos, most importantly to spread awareness of selective mutism, because it is a condition that isn't very well known. So if people can share videos, I've got a few videos about, like, from a parent's perspective, what parents want the world to know about selective mutism. So if people have a look at those videos and share them and help it become a more well-known condition, that would be beautiful.
Amazing. We will do that. Lucy, thank you so much for such a beautiful, beautiful episode, for just sharing with us so vulnerably, so openly, just for being such a light. I think it's really examples like you that help us all live more and more happily, with more clarity, with more magic inside of us. And so thank you so much for being who you are and continuing to create that magic that you do every single day. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm so honoured that you asked me to be on your channel.
Hey, I could not say no to your beautiful story. I was just taken away. So thank you.